Now this is buffer time. Respect.
What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Greetings, Buffer Timers. We're here again, and we're starting 13 weeks of fun reviewing all of the Star Trek movies. But before we get into the motion picture, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Scott from Opinions No One Cares About.
Hi. Robbie Sherman from Conversations with Robbie Sherman.
I am the Windgrace unit that's infecting the stream.
That tracks. That tracks.
Like,
Is there any Star Trek news that we've missed in the past week? Oh, Windgrace, you had something posted, but I haven't had a chance to watch it to see if it's a real thing.
Long story short, at Vancouver Expo, something up there, William Shatner claims he's in talks with one of the current shows to come back. With one of the writers for a current Star Trek show, but he didn't. He said they should be sending him an offer today or tomorrow, whatever that means.
I'd like to think the only one that could be is Strange New Worlds, because Academy is just too far out there in the timeline.
Unless they want him to come back as like a training hologram or something.
Oh, okay. Okay, I could see that.
But he basically said the only reason he would come back is if it's like a warranted story, and I feel like that's not really a meaty enough role for him, but who knows?
Okay, well, let's get into the Will Shatner thing that we're here to talk about, the motion picture. Before I even start asking any of the various amounts of questions we have, I just want to lay my backstory on this. This is the first Trek movie I ever saw. It was on TV when I was a kid. And after seeing a bunch of TNG already by the age of 8 or 9, whenever I saw this, it's just what am I watching? I don't get it. And almost every movie I've either soured or softened on over the years, and I just haven't on this one. I feel exactly the same as the first time I saw it. I'm bored to death and I don't know what I'm watching. The moniker, the motionless picture, really, really sticks here. The worst part is I still don't think it's the worst Star Trek movie, but it is the most boring for me, easily.
it's up there, though.
I looked up the budget for this. That's $44 million, and I think they could have easily done this for half of that if they just cut out half of the tracking shots that they have in this thing. And I'm going to defend parts of this movie because I actually do enjoy a lot about it and think there is a lot to salvage out of it. But at the same time, yeah, you are definitely right. This thing is boring, up to a point, because it just does not know when to cut the brakes.
No, it actually knows when to just go on 3-4 minutes extra past the point of no return.
Mm-hmm.
And then keep going even further.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, speaking of which, no, go ahead, Scott.
I mean, we've all just watched it. That's literally how it started. What kind of movie starts like this, where you have just a blank field of stars and background music for, I counted, 2 minutes and 44 seconds before the Paramount logo and the opening title? This movie had a cold open that sucked.
Actually, quite a few older movies do that, and that was the thing about this. This is the last high-budget movie that did it. The way I understand it, there was one other, and I can't remember what it is, but there's one other movie after this that did that, where you get the pre-credit just sound field over nothing, and the original was just black. It's only in the director's edition that we got a star field. And I'm gonna say I actually liked it better black. I don't think we needed the star field. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith is honestly the best part of this movie, just doing the score. The score is amazing. And the first question I was gonna ask was, is the opening score or the black screen / star field the best part?
I mean, if nothing else, that's no trick for.
I still think a lot of the effects are like pretty beautiful, and I enjoy, like, I see where the obvious like issues with the effects are, but I also am a sucker for this kind of like 70s like kitsch. Like I I feel like this is on par, at least on a certain level, with the original Star Wars. It doesn't come from far off. Oh, you don't think so? There's a couple of moments that I think they do some pretty good compositing on things. Of course, I am watching the director's cut as well. I haven't seen the original. I don't know what all cuts we're watching. So if we all are having preferred cuts between us, I'm sorry if I missed something.
I mean, honestly, there's only a couple of major things that are different between this and the director's cut that you've seen and the original. First of all, like the audio is so much better. That's what I'll definitely give it. The original is one of those ones where you got to keep the remote in your hand because dialogue from scene to scene it was completely mismatched. And as much as I love the score, the audio mixing, fucking garbage in the original cut, and they did fix that in the director's cut. That's one thing that I noticed right up front. And the score, the opening score, you get the star field as opposed to just a black screen. And the other really, you get to see the model of V'ger all at once, which you didn't get to see in the original. And when they disembark from the Enterprise, that hex thing, that hex matte painting, I've actually got both of them. This is the one. This is the original, and it's just it is so underwhelming. And the updates okay, but it is quite a bit better. I like this better than what they got in the original. Otherwise, it's almost all the same.
Didn't they change Vulcan as well? With extra big statues and stuff in the remake.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I they did something there, but
I love that. I love those giant statues so goddamn much. Like, I rarely get to see Vulcan portrayed like in that manner, and it reminds me of how the comic books sometimes portray Vulcan. I thought that was very fun, at least, and I think that's something that Trek fans can savor on a certain level. It is a boring scene, and like because you have so little emotion going on with it, it kind of drags, but very cool special effects for everything.
I don't agree with you, Norman. Just want to throw that out there. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Oh, Miles. I was thinking Miles O'Brien.
Goddamn, Dustin.
Has anyone else here seen it on the big screen or at a theater or anything for a screening?
Oh, no.
That is where I would say it absolutely shines. And obviously that's what it was originally made for, to be a big screen spectacle. But even with the outdated effects, it definitely is made to be like you're sitting back, like being wowed a lot less so, or a lot more so than maybe the storyline. So I think if anyone is given the chance to see it in a theater, especially if it's the first time they've ever seen it, that probably is the way to go. But it still is pretty long. And there's a lot of stuff they could probably trim down to make that experience even better.
There could have been some trimming. Like, I don't remember exactly how long it took them, just making their way to like V'ger's outer boundary, but it's just shots of effects that look good, just interspersed with so many reaction shots. It's just boring as all hell. And during that, I don't know if you guys noticed, 2 separate occasions where McCoy walks off a turbo lift onto the bridge, just stands there, doesn't say anything, and then goes back in the turbo lift.
I hadn't noticed, but one thing I did notice on this playthrough, and I guess I'll just go to this question: is Bones basically just Kirk's conscience in this movie?
I think a little bit, like the way he's like constantly probing Kirk, and his performance gets softer over the movie. Like it seems like he settles into his role in that. I don't think they do an amazing job of communicating that, but I would definitely agree with you.
I still like to imagine that this is literally he walked off the street and didn't know he was going to be in the movie, and they're just like, oh, we're doing a Star Trek. Get over here.
Yeah, sure. So did that twice.
And there's also that great shot of the guy like barely making it through the door that's closing.
That was fantastic. I don't know if that was just a flood that happened and they thought it was funny, but that got a laugh out of me.
My follow-up to this was, is Bones just the fifth member of the Bee Gees in this? At least when you first meet him here?
He's the only member that matters.
This dude is just ready for Studio 54. He's ready to do some dancing and some lines and...
I mean, I definitely feel like his costume is one of the most dated, and like the beard with it definitely gives him drug dealer vibes. Like, I'm not for sure. I'm not for sure what happened, if like they just couldn't really figure out how to make him get rid of the beard or something, but it all feels a little skeezy for him, and he feels pretty worn down this whole
Well,
movie.
I mean, he gets rid of the beard by the next time you see him, the next scene.
Oh, that's right.
I mean,
That's
it's
what
only
they
just here,
did.
so this whole movie is a time capsule of the 1970s. Yeah, we're definitely going to go out of order, because the next question I was that I guess is pertinent here is, what is with the 1970s sci-fi aesthetic that's like this, that's just like these neutral colors? It's the exact same thing for civilian uniforms in Star Wars. It's the exact same thing
That's exactly what I
for
was thinking.
everything in Battlestar Galactica. It's the Battlestar Galactica look, if it's anything.
Space 1999 did it a bit too. But
Mm.
from what I've heard, and I don't know if this is necessarily true or not, so the 60s, they went way over the top with the colors, because that's when people were first getting color TVs. So they were trying to like way overemphasize all the grooviness. So this was kind of like the reaction to that. The future wouldn't be this way, so we have to like tone it all down and make it all neutral and just like bland.
It was a mistake.
Yeah.
I think there are certain uniforms that stick out a little bit, but I also think that's more for their incongruity as much as for just how much I like them on their own as a uniform. Like Kirk's short sleeve Love Boat Captain uniform is kind of awesome. He fills it out well. You know, Bill was still looking pretty good here. This is some of the last prime years of like hunky Bill.
This is
like,
the last prime Scotty too, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But everyone makes fun of like TNG uniforms for being pajamas. These are
Oh no.
These are
No, bring back those pajamas.
At least that makes sense, because we have all the other uniforms, you have your colors that like designate your department. That shot right there, isn't that like one of at least 3 uniforms that Kirk wears? But apparently,
Yes.
they're all somehow his regulation captaining uniform. Or
Well, I mean, Scott, you gotta be fair, okay? Kirk sweats a lot, okay? Every 3 or 4 hours, you gotta get a nice new uniform on, make yourself feel fresh. Get through the day.
Well, and he's also used to back in the days where his uniform got ripped every 5 minutes, so he just needs to have a bunch of
That's
extras.
a good point.
I mean, after a while, you just get used to putting on more clothes than you need to. You don't feel right if you're not.
So the follow-up there, are these the worst Starfleet uniforms? And if not, what are? And for me, it's hands down. These are so many miles worse than every single other thing we have ever seen in Star Trek. I cannot even.
Outside of the one Kirk's wearing here, I would say yes.
Not even the one here, but the short sleeve Love Boat one. That one's okay. Yep. I can live with that one, but I still hate it.
Yeah, the thing that what's his name there, Sonak, whoever. It's basically this, just kind of updated. Like, we're gonna wash out the color a little bit.
Yeah, they washed them a lot between the 60s and now, and this is just what's left.
Things fade.
I like that just a little bit. the one that he's wearing. Maybe just because I'm a sucker for blue. I like different types of blue shading, but that's not really a big factor to contribute to this movie on any production or design level.
I do like the background characters, all the aliens they came up with this movie that they never addressed, talked about again, but there's like 32 new alien species in here just wandering around.
God.
Yeah,
I barely noticed. Oh my God. Like, what? 32 of these things? They did a terrible job of showing off the 32 fucking aliens they made.
There's like that one shot. The one
Yeah, I
shot.
feel
of
like
the
I
it's
mean,
in the
yeah,
back of that,
there's
it's
just
the end.
there's a couple of really long, big shots in the movie, including this
Right?
one with the most extras ever in Star Trek.
Okay,
What do we
yeah,
do
this
with
was one of the
people?
moments where I was just like, I was
What is
walking
your
away
rate?
from this fucking thing because this was just people watching shit. Like this was not plot. Like I've seen this movie before, and I didn't need to rewatch this shit. Yeah, and
Like,
like
how many
everyone just
times?
feels like they blend in with each other too. I don't think they did a good job with like giving distinguishing uniforms and features in the right way they would do in later years. Ugh.
Yeah, they could very easily be hearing about, the plans to attack the Death Star.
Yeah.
Guy in the front looks like a young Tony Shalhoub almost.
Oh God!
Speaking of
Oh.
uniforms and choices,
Bringing this on us.
it
don't
doesn't
need
even
close-ups.
want to.
Wrong way.
No, that's. I guess
It will
that's-
not let you
That's
defile
as
our
much
eyes.
as I can make it. It's
Hold on.
being difficult. But yeah, I think everybody can see what we're getting at here. There's something very wrong with these uniforms, and it is in this picture.
It's very cold in space.
Okay, enough of creepy child molester Stephen,
Oh, God.
whatever his
Yeah,
name
we
is.
gotta do something about that guy in this movie. Like, I wish we could just have like an actual cut where we could just replace him like with another actor. They could do that shit now. Like,
Yeah, but what if
But,
the
like-
next actor they choose is someone terrible too? Like imagine they go
They
to
had-
the actor and they're like Kevin Spacey.
Replaced with Kanye West.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Okay, so let's get off the uniforms here for at least a minute. Why is the Klingons' first instinct to shoot at this random energy cloud? I mean, I know they're the Klingons,
That's
but
Klingon.
like, did they just shoot at every nebula that they find?
I hope so. I hope that's like General Order 1. See a nebula, shoot it. If shooting doesn't work, attack it with a batleth.
yeah, all that stuff was actually kind of funny for me. It just seems so unprompted, and it's definitely a big thing that you should point out with this movie is that like sometimes they just do a lot of unprompted stuff. Like this movie is pieced together from loads of different shooting attempts, and it pretty much is. I mean, it got ballooned out to 44 million because it took them a lot longer to do all the effects, and they had to go through a whole nother production team. And God
Remember
bless
that
Douglas.
That's like
What?
200 million updated in today's dollars.
Yeah, and God bless Douglas Trumbull and the job he did on this. Just a special effects titan. I think he pulled off a few amazing shots in this. Working with his crew, and the days they had to work to finish this up was like 3 shifts of 24-hour days for like each little crew he had assembled under him. Yeah, just insane.
It's like shooting a
Nadia's
wildcat.
got it right.
Yep.
I mean, if
And
you
sorry.
remove this scene, how long until we get any actual action in the movie, though? I feel like this was, oh crap, we need some action. Let's throw some Mark Leonard Klingons on screen real quick.
Yeah, because you don't get anything for another like 40 minutes until the totally contrived wormhole.
I would also like to mention that I love the look of the Klingon ships inside. I love all the button arrays and stuff. I think that looks cool. I wish if that's left over from phase 2, then I would have liked to have seen stuff like that going on in phase 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see the Klingon update for the first time, and you get Mark Leonard to play something other than Zarek, or something other than somebody with pointy ears. So that's pretty cool.
I do like the Klingon aesthetic here. Yeah, it's definitely a highlight of whatever's going on in this scene.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of indicative of like the small pleasures of this movie, and they get yanked away from you so quick, and then you just get lost in a mire of melancholy. It's a frustrating movie on that level.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so let us not forget the ship porn. Just glamour shots of the Enterprise from every angle.
Sweet, sweet, sexy ship porn. Like, there's nothing like it, honestly, in the Trek canon. This has some of the greatest ship porn in the whole history of Star Trek.
Well, we had the question, on a scale of 1 to jumping the shark, how overdone is the ship porn?
Fonzie was definitely strapping those skis on.
Strapping jet boots onto them skis.
Rocket boots.
I wish I could go back in time and actually experience this coming from the TV show to see this for the first time. This is absolutely one of my favorite versions of the Enterprise, though. It had to have been some sort of spectacle coming from your 12-inch TV back in the day to seeing this. So I can understand the want and the desire to do it, but maybe half the time could have been
a lot of this was just nostalgia in 1979, but hasn't aged super well to now. There's so much good like time capsuling here, and good updates for like, oh my god, the show truly hasn't been on the air for 10 years. Let's just forget about the animated series for a moment. So revisiting it and updating, I can see how this would be like a huge spectacle in theaters, especially when like big blockbuster thrillers aren't really a thing. Like Star Wars was one of the first things that really like captured the public imagination the way it did. So, you know, I can see why in that era this would be a big thing. Today, though, yeah, I counted it once. There's like 6 minutes total of ship porn between this first shot and then right as they leave space dock. It drags so hard. It's about 4.5 minutes longer than it needs to be.
I do find a lot of pleasure in getting to have all these nice like shots of the Enterprise in this iteration. Like you can capture that now and do whatever you want with it too. So it has historical benefit, I guess, on a certain level, having it released to the public. But I would have preferred them to cut that down just slightly for the sake of this fucking movie. Like I am trying to like show the things that are worth defending about this film, but it is so long and monotonous in some ways. Like all the like gazing at it too is very self-indulgent in an almost like funny way. Like there was a part I was watching earlier when they're like looking at the Enterprise, and just the looks they have to put on their face the whole time just feel so plastered on. Like they feel like parody almost, you know, like it feels outlandish. Like it doesn't feel like it connects in the way they want it to. And I know they want this to feel nostalgic and for it to feel, you know, like really like amazing to take in. But for modern eyes, it just looks like a parody of what that happens to be in 70s cinema.
And it makes even less sense story-wise because it makes it look like they had to take that little shuttle around the entire ship just to find a spot to dock.
Oh my god, and let's not forget the fact that, oh yeah, well, the transporters are down, and we'll see that in a little bit more detail in a bit, but like Kirk's got to beam up to a station to take a shuttle pod over to the Enterprise. It's like, well, why didn't you just take a shuttle from the surface? It boggles my goddamn mind. They purposely rounded this so hard to just get you more time in the ship porn, and it's I don't know.
What did you do at the end of the 6 minutes? They're just like, one more time. Bring her around again.
Yeah, that would be a very Lower Decks or God, who am I thinking of? Mel Brooks thing to do.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if anybody's ever heard the whole thing about how he wanted
Oh yeah.
Spaceballs to basically just be the entire movie to just be the ship at the beginning, and it just keeps going forever, and that's just the movie.
Oh, that's great in concept.
You
but
know,
damn.
Mel Brooks could pull it off too.
I have a minor aside. I like Spaceballs, but it does feel like the work of 80-year-old men in the 80s, trying to fucking do a sci-fi parody. It misses a lot of opportunities. I've always felt I didn't see it.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe it does, Norman. Maybe it does.
It does, Norman. It
they're making a new
absolutely does.
Spaceballs, so
They are?
yeah, with Josh
What?
Gad and I think Mel Brooks is attached, even though he's like 98 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
And
I
that's
wanted
one
to
of the few. Say, most of his movies, he ends with setting up a part 2. He never ended Spaceballs. I'm still waiting for part 2 of Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Maybe he'll get around to it.
I mean, I was really excited when they mentioned that Josh Gad was coming into a Mel Brooks production. I mean, that's the guy that I'd imagine would come into a Mel Brooks production at this point in time. Ooh boy, that's going to be something.
As long as Tuvok's in it.
Well, here's the thing, James K., and this is going to bring me to a question that we had. It was an episode. So is this really just a long retread of TOS's The Changeling? Where they find a Earth probe that's been severely advanced and now wants to find its creator from Earth? How is this not just a much, 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 much longer version of The Changeling?
I mean, yeah, even so far as eliminating the organics because they were just kind of in the way. Didn't erase Uhura's memories, so that's one difference.
And it doesn't even do the classic TOS Kirk trope of talking a computer to death.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And I even like this movie I have a decent little bit of love for this movie, but I've never thought it was anything better than that episode, and I don't think it achieves anything more interesting as far as explorations about identity goes. It's pretty shallow on some levels. You can definitely tell they're trying to interact with larger themes, but they're not quite getting there.
I find this comment from Wolf74 absolutely fascinating. I've never owned a beta tape player. I never will own a beta tape player, but I would own the motion picture on beta tape just to say I owned that. That's pretty cool.
I wonder if they had this on Laserdisc.
They did. They absolutely did.
Oh shit! I
had
gotta
it on
see that
VHS,
now.
Now I want to get it on HD DVD or something too.
There probably was a release circa 2007.
Did you have an HD DVD player, Josh?
I believe I do because the Xbox 360 plays them.
Oh, okay,
Well, it doesn't
cool.
it doesn't standard, but it has the external disc drive you can get.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
I almost got one. I honestly thought it was going to win the format wars just because it was cheaper, but I'm honestly glad that Blu-ray won because it's higher quality and it never scratches. It's kind of great. I love Blu-rays. Is the angst between Kirk and Decker in any way interesting or necessary to the plot?
It's necessary to the plot insofar as they had a whole side story written around it that we didn't need, but just to prove, I guess, that Kirk didn't know this new version of the ship as well as he thought he did, and whether or not it was planned going into Wrath of Khan or not. This is something I think they said in the Trek Culture review. It kind of leads into his inevitable arc of like aging, and he's not in his youth anymore, even though this movie doesn't deal with that at all. He still seems like he's the swashbuckler, but so it kind of adds a little bit to his character overall, but it was mostly just to probably get that wormhole scene and then to just make Decker seem like he was getting cucked a little bit during the movie.
If my reading is correctly, I think there's a little bit of like struggle with Bill on the acting front about how we're playing Kirk at this point in time too. Like, I mean, it's been a while since I've really done a deep dive on this movie. I really only had time to watch the movie before I came in, but I remember reading at one point that like Kirk was having trouble fitting into like this elder role.
Out of anybody in the original Men in Tights cast, Patrick Stewart is the one I most want to see in tights. Are you kidding me?
Dave Chappelle.
We're
Oh
men,
God.
we're
Very much
men
so.
in tights.
Tight.
Well, then we need
Yeah,
a
for
sequel
me,
to
the whole-
Cupid also.
Oh God, yeah, you could like mismatch that. That'd be awesome. God, now I lost my train of thought. What the hell were we talking about in the motion picture?
Talking about Decker.
Oh yeah.
Decker
Oh,
and Kirk.
yeah.
People came to see Star Trek. You're going to expect to see, especially if you're bringing back the old crew. And at this point, there hasn't been any other Trek, so I don't know why you call it the old crew. You want the Enterprise with Kirk and Spock in the gang. You expect Captain Kirk. Honestly, you don't just the fact that it's 10 years later. Sure, you can be an admiral, but I don't think there's anything that says he can't command the ship.
I mean,
Right.
it was the only one in range, so
It's always
Oh
the only
God,
one in
that the
range.
beginning of that trope. But no, what I was going to say was I really hate this angst and this God, what was I going to say? Gene Roddenberry's rule about interpersonal conflict. Did it come about because of this movie and how hard it did not work on screen? And it just looked like these two clashing, and it just more filler for the movie. It didn't do anything. If you took it out of the plot entirely, it would be the same.
You could probably make an hour and a half version of this movie, honestly. You could just make it all speed by, and it would be so much better. Like, I think the only value the Kirk and Decker stuff has is as camp. Like, watching two actors just snipe at each other. There were a few times where I was really, like, very entertained by their, like, slight banter. Like, they don't even have very good, like, anger at each other. Like, when they first meet each other and Kirk's telling him that he's going to take over, Decker's, like, in awe for a couple of minutes. And he's just like, "You're taking over the ship?" And Kirk's just like, "Yeah." That's all he says. He's just like, "Yeah." I mean, that's what's happening, man. Like, he doesn't even
also,
care.
like, why do you need to be demoted in rank for a temporary assignment? That's what's always gotten me. Like, this is only a temporary thing, and if you're going to be the captain going forward after this, why do we even need a reduction in rank? Can't you just like be?
you're
Yeah, they
temporarily
didn't
an
demote
ensign,
Kirk
Kim.
from admiral. They didn't demote Kirk from admiral. It's not like there's going to be two captains on the ship.
Yeah,
Co-captains?
love-
Was this lower decks?
Cool.
co-captain, co-first officers.
I love how hollow the framing of that subplot is because he just like comes in and just takes some guy's job for a minute. He's just going to go back to his position when all this is over. But this whole time, this guy's just fuming about his position being taken when he's going to get it back. Like, he's going to be captain again if he gets through all this. Like, it's not a big deal, man. You are working above your pay grade, being angry about this fucking junk. Like, what is wrong with you, Decker? Like,
And it probably
his-
taught Kirk the wrong lesson, because then if you come to Generations, he refused to become captain, even though Ferris Bueller's friend there is like, no idea what's going on. He's like, please take
Oh.
charge of the ship. He's like, nah.
I'd never really thought about that like dynamic between those two scenes, but that's really true. Following up on this though, is the warp imbalance wormhole just a chance for Decker to upstage Kirk, or just a chance to pack more 70s special effects into the movie?
It's a chance to slow things down even more, literally.
It's both,
Word
but I
is-
love the fucking scanimatron effects of it. Like that makes like when you see their like okay, that stuff is fun to watch, even though I know how like corny that is. But when you actually see their little scanatron bends when they're being pushed by it in the warp, like that was so much fun for me to watch. They probably used like 12 machines just to get that fucking effect to look right.
I mean, again, yeah, it does look cool. Even to this day, it looks cool. But at the time, I mean, that was probably one of the big showcases to get this thing on the, like, look at what we're doing here. Like, yeah, we're going to chase
Like,
a rock
yeah,
for 14 minutes.
There's several bits of layering in it, Like, they had to do a little bit like to make it look like that.
Okay, is Justin muted or am I frozen?
Well, I don't.
Am I here? You don't hear me?
Now I do. Now I do.
I
You're all
didn't.
good to
Okay.
me?
Now.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
I thought we were all just enjoying the image. Sorry.
We're taking our time, like this movie.
No, I think what I did say was that I remember that this was the last special effect to be done for the movie, so even the director didn't see it until the screening.
Oh. Yeah, he
So this
says
was like a
that's
big time-consuming thing.
he does say the theatrical cut is a rough cut to him, that he doesn't feel like it reflects how he actually wanted things to look.
Yep, it's a good trip, Nadia. You got to take a good trip to watch this movie. This and Wizard of Oz. Watch them back to back, in fact.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
your trip will wear out before this movie's over, but you might have to re.
I do want to say I think this stuff ties it into other 70s contemporaries. We got Douglas Trumbull, who had worked on Close Encounters. And if we think about like stuff like Logan's Run and Space 1999, they're exploring similar things. It's very corny in a lot of ways for sci-fi now, but I also think there's pleasures for people who find this stuff interesting.
It was very much trying to be like 2001, but like a Star Trek version of it.
Yeah. And I wish they just had a little more compelling ideals with that, because I like that it's tied into that legacy a bit. Douglas Trumbull worked on 2001. Like, he has a legacy in thinking man sci-fi that very few in the world really have, if you think about it.
I mean, they both end with space babies, kind of. Just one of them gets creepy old man. Well, how old is Decker in this? Like 30? It's the 70s. Everyone looks older than they are. It's probably only like 25. But
Yeah, right.
No, he's got to be more, because like Twyla Scott in TNG was said to be the youngest captain ever done, and she must have been like 30 or early 30s. So finishing up this run of stuff about Decker, is it possible nowadays to watch TMP and not immediately be biased against Decker? Or did his character ever have a chance?
I don't know if I can answer that question like truthfully, because I think by the time I had watched this, he had been outed. So I think I'd always had that in my head, like every time I had watched this. I think I watched this for the first time like 6 years ago. I mean, it's been a little while since he's been outed, right? Like I didn't look it up.
oh yeah, it's probably like 2006 even, maybe.
Oh shit. Okay, yeah. So it's been a minute.
I think I could, because I asked the question. But if you're just looking at the character itself, first there's the fact that, like, I think canonically he's supposed to be the son of Matt Decker, right? From the Doomsday Machine,
Yes.
the Commodore who was like ready to fly the Enterprise into what I call it, Space Mecha Godzilla, whatever.
Mecha Cigar. But yeah,
Yes.
I think even in the novelization, they talked about it. Why they didn't have time to in the movie? Well, I don't know.
Yeah. So he's got that stigma against him. But then again, like I was saying earlier, you come to see a Star Trek movie, and the only Star Trek you know is Kirk and the gang. You expect to see Kirk and the gang in their assigned roles, or at least back on the Enterprise in a way that seems plausible. But instead, you got this other guy who's like, no, I'm supposed to be the captain. I'm the one who's commanding this ship now because I know it so well. And, Kirk does his best to be like, okay, cool. You're still here. We're kind of co-captains. You show me what I need to do. What'd he say? Can you help me nursemaid me through this?
That's got to be the worst part of the whole framing, right? Like, for this to be the motion picture, we have very small interactions with the larger original cast, and I don't necessarily like O'Hara just being so reverent of Jim Kirk. Like this that weird line she gives where it's like, if anybody's going to get us out of it, it's him. Like or we have like so much of a chance. Like I don't know. I just thought that was a horseshit line.
Well, it's a hell of a lot better than like her TOS persona or Captain, I'm frightened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean I would say that, but I still think she's always been given a massive disservice generally throughout the series, and I wish there was more for her, especially since this is a very feminine coded like sci-fi movie. I think it tries to deal a little bit with how men like see women in the Ileana and Decker stuff. I kind of like that as part of its thinking man sci-fi legacy. If you can tolerate watching that guy like do all this stuff and not think about his issues, then you could separate the fact that when they were making this in time that they weren't intending for any of that. And if you're looking at that from a historical perspective, then I think it has just a little bit of value for Trek fans. God, I just wish that guy wasn't in here though. It makes it so hard to even like try to recommend this movie.
I mean,
Jesus.
Honestly, like, I've never liked Decker. He's not a memorable character. I don't care whether he lives or dies or becomes a new version of life bonding with V'ger. I've never cared. And then you know what you know about the actor, and yeah, it makes me care even less. I don't think it really does anything to the movie because I just didn't care to begin with about Decker, so...
I mean, the only reason I care is because I have like a huge interest in 70s sci-fi tropes. That's the only reason I give a shit about this. No normal person would give a shit about this.
Nadia's got this right, 100%.
Yep. It's the kind of thing Women at Warp would tackle, I believe. Is that what that channel's called?
I don't know. I mostly agree with James K. Like, I've always wanted more about Eileen. I've wanted more about the Deltans, because even the few times we've seen them since, we haven't gotten to know anything about them more than they fuck.
Her, right?
Great.
Decker was supposed to be from Phase 2, or was he not from Phase 2? Was he created just for the movie?
Oh,
no idea.
Okay. I'm just curious if he was a holdover from like some grander plan they had, because I know eventually he and Aaliyah became Will Riker and Deanna Troi.
Right. I mean, that becomes so obvious when you see this scene compared to the first meeting of them in Encounter at Farpoint. It's like it is beat for beat, and they could have used the same music cues too.
Except Troy didn't get her 3 boobs like Jean wanted. Probably thanks to this movie.
That's fair. So moving on here, the next thing I had that I've never really understood why does Spock's shuttle just show up out of nowhere with no orders or communication to the Enterprise? And Chekhov's like scanning it like, oh, its intentions are okay, or whatever he says. And I'm like, what? Maybe send some comms. Why? I don't understand the secrecy.
Because they wanted a cool reveal on the bridge, I guess. I don't know.
God damn, that stuff feels half baked.
Yeah,
Oh man, that shit drove me nuts. Like watching this, like I would just like walk around and do other shit when I started having to deal with this crap in this movie.
Oh, there's Dr. Chapel.
yeah.
I was really
Yeah,
happy
it's
she made it.
But imagine how
Yeah,
much
it's kind of
better
like
this
he was
scene
just on his way to check this thing out for himself because he could sense it, and then he's like, "Oh, they're doing a movie. I should be part of that."
But you
I mean,
don't
it
like
just
send a
colon blocked
communique or contact Starfleet and ask to be reinstated or anything. Like, if he's super fucking logical now, shouldn't that give him even more reason to go through the chain of command and do the proper motions? Oh God, it hurts my brain to think about. Another thing that hurts my brain to think about is there's a line after Ilea disappears about Dr. Chapel. It's like, oh, her and Dr. Chapel were friends. Well, is there more about this? Were they posted in the same posting at some point? Because otherwise, what we know about them, she's known Ilea for about 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's just more hollow
Yeah.
character writing, more of this movie showing its seams in the worst way. I hate that junk. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't add on to the plot. It doesn't make anything interesting. Frustrating stuff.
This is one of the best just all around comments ever, because the plot has to happen eventually. And in this movie, it
that sums
makes
up the movie in
means even
general.
more. Yep. Right there. No more notes. We're all done. Pack it up. No, we do have a handful more questions, and I'm honestly surprised that we got close to the end of these things. Is there any point to all the random special effects in entering the cloud and everyone looking dumbfounded? Because it's just a series of special effect,
Yes.
show character looking dumbfounded, another special effect, character looking dumbfounded, repeat.
Whoa.
And again, McCoy walking on the bridge, doesn't say anything, walks away twice.
We get
that meant
Spock
stuff in
stealing the spacesuit, and then Kirk stealing the other spacesuit.
All that shit made me wish like Douglas Trumbull himself could have edited this movie, because I feel like he would have taken out all those face like shots, like because all these people just being dumbfounded by things that they've seen equivalents to, in the past. Like we know these people's history and we know what they've fucking seen and encountered. This shouldn't be too amazing for them. They should have some idea. Like, yes, very yes. Yes,
I mean,
yes.
some of the ideas of what V'ger had like stored in his data banks or whatever was kind of cool, like the coming from the machine world and just converting all of this stuff to data, which was kind of seemed a little Brainiac to me. I don't know if they borrowed from that.
Yeah.
It is that's kind of cool. Out of all the special effects and just the random stuff, that is mostly cool.
I really love the planet shot, like where you just see like a whole universe in V'ger. I think that looks pretty good for the time. It probably would look better on film on a certain level, but I don't have any way to actually say that. If someone can tell me if it does or not, that'd be amazing.
I'd also have to
Let's
wonder
get a
if Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, when they did their the universe expanding song, if they just basically took this scene and ran with it, because it's almost the same stuff.
Start singing
This movie is entirely too much up its own ass. Like, that's where the worst of it comes from is just them like wanting you to admire all this stuff so much when the stuff is like very competent and occasionally excellent, but it doesn't always meet that standard. And it fits in so well with other sci-fi properties around it from the time that you can mistake it for other things. I wanted to defend this movie more, but I just find myself like being frustrated by it. Like it's really bad around the seams.
Speaking of up its own ass, I have to go to this question. So let me get this straight. Spock forced his way into a space butthole so he could mind meld with a space vagina.
Roddenberry.
And there it is.
I think that's another thing about, the men in Trek maybe not recognizing consent or something like that. I don't think it's expressed well, but I think the effect, like the painting of it, is kind of cool on a certain level, but I think it's dumb. Like that's, I just think it's dumb. Like all.
Muted again.
Nope. This is purposeful padding of time. Everybody has to take this in. Our whole
Section
audience.
69.
Those damn chronotons.
Could you guys really not hear me?
Yeah, I couldn't hear a damn word you were saying.
Okay, because I was unmuted, so that's not good.
Maybe you can't talk
Yeah.
over pictures?
Anyway, it was just more talk about space buttholes and space vaginas, so we'll just
important
skip over that. But yeah, the symbolism here is it is a choice for sure.
They really should have worked harder to develop these concepts out into something that resemble like fully formed thoughts. Because when we get into this stuff, it definitely feels like a TV show thing that's been stretched way too hard. And maybe that's purposefully like pushing the content boundaries of what they were allowed to do with the original Star Trek, even if it's goofy and awkward and uncomfortable to think about.
Uhura's fan dance served a purpose, though. Like, this stuff is imagery for the sake of showing Roddenberry-like imagery, for lack of a better term.
You know what? Uhura's fan dance did serve a purpose. Iconography. Unforgettable.
I don't have the actual picture, but what was with the games Decker shows Pro by Leah in the recreation deck? Like the first one some kind of hopscotch? I want to know more about those. Like, we only just finally got our first look at Parisi squares in lower decks this past season after almost 40 years. So after coming up on 50. Oh, you're right. No, it wasn't lower decks. It was Prodigy. But yes.
I don't know. I guess they were just trying to show off all the fun, fancy things you can do on the new Enterprise, including looking at the picture of the ring ship.
I love
Although
the coloring
animated
in this
series had
shot.
holodeck. Sorry, well, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I love the coloring on this little bit of an image you got up here. I think that's one of the few images in the movie where like the coloring looks really cool in an almost psychedelic way. Like they almost achieved that. I'm glad somebody brought up Space 1999 because that thing is really aligns well with this. If you want more of that kind of taste of 70s sci-fi.
Well, this is the first time we saw a sonic shower too, right? So I mean, it kind of adds to Star Trek history.
I hadn't thought about that. I thought it was like a force field, but yeah, she's coming. That makes a lot of sense.
Although how she just kind of materialized a robe, I don't know. But sensors, I guess.
Maybe you should adjust your sensors.
It's a post-scarcity future, Josh. That's how.
Fair enough, I suppose.
So following up on Ilea probe, are carbon units an infestation?
Just once I would have been like, hey, we carbon units, we made the Enterprise.
I mean, I guess that depends on the setting and place. You know, there are certain carbon units that I think would make the world better if they were just gone. But I think these carbon units on the Enterprise, I'm willing to take, even if
We're
Decker
definitely in
sucks.
no way talking about Elon Musk.
No,
No.
no. My lawyer does not endorse that comment.
Yeah, I do. That's like one of the very few like interesting subplots that makes you think like, yeah, are carbon units an infestation? Yeah, it definitely depends. There's a lot of context and nuance there. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. We can't all be the Cisco, though.
I wish I could be.
Ooh, that's a good what
Damn
if.
it.
What if Vidra was delayed and met Cisco?
That would be entirely more fun than all this. Like, oh my god, giving James Avery like some identity in a story like this, that would be entirely more interesting, I bet. All the acting feels so flat throughout this whole movie. Like, it's just so downplayed.
Yes.
It's so frustrating.
Even the scene where Spock just beats the console to death. Smashes all the buttons with his.
I mean, that's a
cold
highlight. But still. There are moments where I think they're supposed to be big moments, but they never play as big moments. Like, this movie fumbles the ball a lot.
Do you think the Voyager reveal worked? Like, were you shocked when you found out for the first time what was really going on?
The
laughed.
first time, yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, the first time I saw it was like shortly after the Voyager probes had seen Neptune, for real. So it was like, that's kind of a big deal. I'm like, okay, cool, more Voyager probes. So as like an 8-year-old kid first seeing the movie, yeah, that's pretty cool. But every subsequent nope.
I watched that scene right before we logged onto the stream, and it made me laugh so goddamn hard. Like, when he like uncovers it and there's just a massive like tuba blow or something. I don't know. It's a crazy low note that goes off, and it is so funny. It punctuates the moment in the worst way. It just sounds like a big old fart like going off on the main movie reveal. I couldn't believe anyone allowed it to sit there. Like, isn't it basic composing knowledge that if you put like a farty sound at a major moment, you're going to ruin your moment? It was a crazy bit of bad theming for this movie.
I do like the instrument that they had to build for the V'ger sound effect, where it's just the gigantic, long, thick bass string on a rod that can be expanded or contracted. So like it moves the pinch point while the string is moving. It made that sound that you can really only get with that. So that's something.
Like that.
No, it was a motorcycle. Even though it's snowing out.
Okay, so we had one last regular question. Is Discovery's second season plotting about the sphere data a nod to V'ger? I've always felt like it kind of is. I don't think they're directly connected, but I think it's a nod.
They're remarkably similar.
Yeah, it's very... I mean, again, that didn't really end up going anywhere as far as revelations go, but could have been connected for all we know. So it was probably a do-over on that.
I haven't watched that episode in God knows how long, so no comment.
Well, it's really like a whole thing through the season because you get the sphere with all this data from just traveling the galaxy for thousands of years, and then suddenly it's integrated with Disco's computer. It is Disco's computer. We have Zora.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a nod. All right, as we come up on that 1 hour mark, let's end this thing out as we do almost every episode. Let's rank the motion picture out of 10. If I ranked this when I first saw it when I was like 8 or 9, I would give it a 1. And I still feel like it's one of the most boring movies I've ever seen in any category, not just Trek. However, in the realm of Trek, I have to give it a 2. For just a couple of reasons. One, like Jerry Goldsmith's score throughout the movie kind of saves it. There's at least something here. Where there's a couple of movies in Star Trek that I feel like are worse. Even one that Jerry Goldsmith scored that we'll get to in approximately 10 weeks as we talk about these things. I'm not going to name names yet. But I think there are just a couple of redeeming moments. Just enough interesting things to keep it off the absolute bottom of the barrel, but boy, go ahead, Scott.
Okay. I would go with, this is going to be layered. I just don't want to shock anybody with this. I would go with an 8 for visual effects that amazingly still hold up unless they pulled some major restoration on it that I don't know about. A 5 for a story that basically parrots a pretty decent TOS episode, but we caught them doing it. And then just a 1 for boring me to death. Like, honestly. And I think that averages out to roughly 4.5.
Okay. I've been balancing on a 5 and the 6 as the episode goes on. But really, am I being critically fair to this thing if I give it that much credit? Because this thing just does nothing to reinforce our expectations of what Star Trek the Motion Picture should be. It doesn't stand out enough from the crop of science fiction films that are around it to make it memorable in the way better science fiction films are. It's got a hell of a pedigree, amazing people working on it. It occasionally achieves some pretty decent effects for its time. The score has a lot to offer if you're keeping your ears open and you're interested. If you have any investment in that kind of thing as a film viewer, yeah, maybe the 4 is the best I could do, and maybe that's being generous because it throws away every plot point that it gets that it could chew on and make into something that would be a thinking man's science fiction film from the 70s that would make it memorable in that way. Soylent Green is a more interesting film than this, and it's slow and ponderous in the same ways this movie is. But at least it has actual themes that it has developed throughout the film, because this thing has multiple themes that it could take. It's about the male identity that authority figures have with their female compatriots. It's about aging. It could be about how the world is seen in gender perspectives, but it never gives you any real resolution to any of those things it sets up in a way that's interesting and fulfilling. So yeah, I think a 4 is all I can do.
So I know we've been bashing this a lot more than probably praising it tonight, but
And with good reason.
I was going to go into this saying I liked this movie, but I feel like I appreciate it is the best way to describe it. Like a lot of people have said, the visuals and the score, for the most part, are the redeeming values here. A couple of the other parts I really like about this are things that they don't really fully explore enough, like the strangeness and the weirdness and the vastness of the universe. So you're not just always encountering people and things that look identical to a human. There's implications that there's just strange stuff out in the Star Trek universe that we're getting glimpses of here. They don't really pull on it necessarily enough. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to being a human built thing anyways. So there are indications of the wider, grander world, but the characterizations of our main Star Trek people that are coming back from the original series, they don't really do anything for me. The new characters don't really do anything for me. So it's got a Star Trek coat of paint, so to say, but none of them really feel like the Star Trek characters we loved in the prior series or we're going to love in the upcoming movies. So I think it missed on a lot of the elements that truly make it a great Star Trek vehicle or a great piece of Star Trek. But at the same time, it's such an oddity, such a piece of like this one installment where it's bridging the gap from the series to the stuff that happens in the 80s. It's like the only relic of 70s Star Trek we have. And I think part of that is just worth it. Like McCoy's costume. I mean, that's instantly iconic. This instantly places it in a point in time that's just very interesting to find out what would have happened if they had run with phase 2 or just done anything further with this. So as an oddity and for the things that it did do right, I can't even say this is probably my least favorite movie, but it's probably the most boring. So I'm probably going to have to give it, I'm just going to give it a 5. Why not? I'll go the highest.
Okay. Yeah, what I'll say is that without it, we may well not have gotten more TOS movies. We may never well have gotten TNG or anything subsequent, and Star Trek may have died from there. So, you know, there are reasons to like this movie for the things that it gave us, not necessarily for the movie itself. Yeah, it's the worst TOS movie for me. Even Star Trek 5, it at least has a plot that you can follow.
Right.
The plot is just, it's everywhere. It just doesn't really coalesce. And at least with 5, there's like the stuff between the big 3 that you can really get some character development going with. There's no character development here. There's no likable characters here. I like Nurse Chapel more than or Dr. Chapel more than I like anybody else in the cast. And she's got like 3 scenes.
The only character
5
development is Spock almost got character development. Then V'ger got the
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, Spock's like an entirely new character starting in this movie. Going forward.
5 is even funnier, right? Like it even has more genuine laughs in it. Like I think a lot of the things that made me laugh in this are unintentional, whereas that one has some actual genuine laughs in it.
and marshmallows.
That is more worth it for the marshmallow scene than anything in this movie.
Where's my copy?
All right. So, any final thoughts or questions about the motion picture before we wrap this up this week?
I guess maybe I'd like to stress that this is part of a line of like big budget sci-fi that the people who were working on this were a part of. Robert Wise is the director of the Day the Earth Stood Still, one of the most iconic sci-fi films ever. One of the first real intelligent sci-fi films released by a major studio. Like, and I think if you could slot this into anything at all, then it's within the larger filmography of the people who are working on it. I think it has historical value on that level. But this thing just sucks other than that.
Yeah, because what you're basically saying is get a lot of people who have a lot of talent and worked on a lot of great movies, and they all came together and made this.
Yeah, it all feels so disconnected. Like no one was communicating in the proper ways. Like this elongated production they did from a TV show into a movie really turned us into a bland piece of nothing. Like just frustrating. I would rather have the show than this.
It wanted to be so contemplative and so like existential, but it was really just pondering.
And you know, I admire the yearning of that. Like I admire the attempt to do that, but that doesn't pay out to entertainment. This is not entertaining.
That's fair. All right. With that, let's get the heck out of here. Next week, obviously, we will be moving on to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And the gap between how bad this is versus how good that is just, it is staggering. You know, there are so few films that the second movie is even anywhere near as good as the first one, let alone just blows past it by miles. So I am much more looking forward to talking about Ricardo Montalban's chess next week.
And
so
every week.
I would absolutely talk about that man's chest every week. But
oh man, we finally get to do the con joke. It's going to be fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining me and talking about this, and thanks for all of you for tuning in. So until we see you again, live long.